Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. I heard you say you wanted more time, so I'm going to make sure I rush through this and give you enough time to give us the economic implications of what's going on. Rufai, good morning to you. Vimbai, all our viewers.
Morning.
Let's rush through this quickly for Doctor. You had oil dropping on Monday, 7.18% to 71.48. Brent was almost at $80 a barrel on Saturday following the attacks on Iran. Look at West Texas yesterday, dropping 7.2% to 68.51. We roll on to Tuesday early morning and the decline continues. 68.83 for Brent crude, West Texas Intermediate at 65. So, I mean, big drop. Let's roll on as we continue to look through the effects. The Strait of Hormuz, I heard Rufai talking about how if they are to close it will Iran essentially shooting themselves in the foot. This chart is a very informative chart that we picked up from the Energy Information Agency, the EIA. To the left of your screen, you've got the supply side of the Strait of Hormuz. So you have a chart looking at 2020 through the first quarter of 2025, 14 million barrels, peaking at about 16 million in 2022, coming back down to about 14. But look at the countries that dominate the supply for the Strait of Hormuz: Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, and Iran. So if they block it, not only are they hurting themselves, they're also hurting their partners in the Middle East, their regional partners as well. Now that's the supply side. On the demand side, the blue charts to the right of the screen shows you who buys the most or who gets the most supply of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. It is China, it is India, it is South Korea, Japan, other Asian countries, and then to a smaller extent, or lesser extent, Europe, the United States. All right. So again, China is one of the major allies of Iran. If they close the Strait of Hormuz, they're going to be alienating a major ally. So very informative chart there on oil supplies there. We move on from there. Wedbush Securities put out a note yesterday saying that they believe that this de-escalation is going to be good for technology stocks. Dan Ives is a managing director, senior equity research analyst. His note said a weakened Iran with no nuclear capacity removes the biggest threat to the Middle East and Israel, which will be viewed as a positive for the market and tech stocks in particular. So we go on from there. The bull case that Wedbush has is the adoption of chips, or rather the tech adoption in the Middle East. We talked about why we didn't see that many countries, popping up to defend Iran. It's because the UAE, the Saudis in particular, want those chips as part of their diversification drive. And this particularly is good for NVIDIA. So if we don't see an escalation, if this ceasefire holds through, this is going to be good for tech stocks. Now, there's been word, we understand that the US is on alert for cybersecurity attacks from Iran. And that actually, Wedbush pointed this out, that is good for cybersecurity stocks in the US. So they pointed out Palo Alto, CyberArk, CrowdStrike, Zscaler, and Checkpoint. Zscaler, I think, is up about 38% year to date. CrowdStrike is up about 28% year to date. So that's on the flip side with respect to cybersecurity opportunities. You can see that no matter what happens, somebody is making money. Also, moving on with respect to what's been going on this in the news, I think you may have already touched on this. Wale Edu, Minister of Finance, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, talking about how Nigeria's revenues through April of this year, January through April, up 40% year on year, 6.9 trillion, I think, versus about 5.2 in the prior year. The revenue generating agencies, he says, have not been remitting revenues on time because of audits, but that should also come due. He mentioned debt service to revenue being 60% for Nigeria as at the end of 2024, massive improvement from the 150% debt service to revenue ratio that we saw in the first quarter of 2023. He did point out that oil is still below target due to infrastructure issues with oil theft. They're trying to ramp that up. And then he talked about the improved domestic refining capacity from the Dangote refinery. We talked about the trade numbers, how that has improved domestic refining, we're importing less fuel from overseas, which is saving us foreign exchange. And then finally, since we're here for the Afrexim Bank annual meetings, which is taking place from from today through to Saturday, Nigeria has set up its first export trading company. It's a collaboration between the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, the Commodity Exchange, and the Africa Trade and Distribution Company. It's going to be called the National Export Trading Company. So there's a big drive. If you look through what was discussed at the West Africa Economic Summit in Abuja to the Africa, the trade agreements and so on and so forth, this feeds into that narrative. That's all we have for business today.
I mean, good stuff, Rotus, as regards, the new trade and investment company. Let's see how that pans out, to be able to support trade. But, I mean, the other factor is the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, that strait does about 20%, of entire crude oil that comes out. Definitely a lot of people will be affected. Iran needs that oil money at this point in time. That very small radius strait, about 33 kilometers radius. So it's going to be a tough one for them. And also they need a couple of their allies to be able to get oil, like countries like, Russia and the likes, and that pretty much cascades into the system. But in all of this, the markets have been very stable. In fact, Rotus, we should be able to study how sturdy the markets have been. The market did not shift. The market knew that all of this was going to end in no time. Could it have been the tacoism of Trump that also aided the market and the trader to say, don't worry, we'll balance here, because he will change his mind very soon? And true to time, a man that was calling for total surrender, that reminded us of Ultimate Warrior and no retreat, no surrender the other day, is now saying, God bless Iran, and he's saying, peace deal, and he's saying, you know what, I should take the credit for this. So, as usual, Taco Trump has changed his mind, and oil prices have dropped. WTI 68, Brent crude 71.48. Also, does it also mean that Nigeria's budget prospects are already in the mud as we speak, because there's no money to be able to cash in? It just lasted about a week.
All right. So much happening around oil. I mean, I don't think anybody expected that sharp 12% decrease in such a short window. But for me, what I'm still waiting for numbers on are the losses to the airline industry, because the disruptions over the past, should we say maybe 3 to 4 days specifically, have been quite intense. Of course, we know the global contribution that airlines like Qatar make, but there were others like KLM, Air France, Singapore Airlines, even Rwanda Air at some point also notified that there would be disruption in their operations. You've got passengers stranded and so forth. So I'm quite intrigued to see how many tens of millions of dollars have been lost in the airline industry following what has happened, and also just what does airfare look like? The airline industry look like now in a time of warfare? I was reading an interesting article that was saying that airlines are learning to adjust, because you saw what happened with Russia and Ukraine. There have been various conflicts, and the thing is, the nature of conflicts is evolving because it's now aerial. It's no longer boots on the ground. So this is almost a moment for the airline industry to start to reflect on, whether they need to start innovating with regards to their routes and how things are done to avert such disruptive events to their revenues in future. So for me, I'm still waiting for those numbers from the airlines.
Okay, very quickly, let me run through it. Let me start with another subject, Tesla. Tesla, I think you reported yesterday, launched a robo-taxi in Austin, Texas. And as of this morning, Tesla's stock price has gone up by about 8.2%. However, there are concerns about robo-taxis. Some people have reported that robo-taxi is not working very well. But what I wanted to tell you yesterday is to say that I hope we will not get to a point where some people will say they want to bring robo-taxi to Nigeria. Because even the taxis that are driven by human beings here, are not doing well. So it will take a long time before we embrace technology. That's number one. Number two, now, the de-escalation of tension as a result of President Trump saying, well, there's going to be ceasefire, total and complete ceasefire, and all of that, I think the market already responded. Now, the market, when there was that attack on Iran, and when Iran retaliated on Israel and also in Al-Daid airbase in Qatar, the market responded. Stock prices fell in Asia. Stock prices fell in the United States. Oil price went up. But as of this morning, Monday, We have seen increased optimism that maybe tensions will relax. On the basis of that promise of ceasefire, which I insist is still uncertain because the original issue has not been resolved about nuclear weaponry of Iran. But we have seen the market responding. Oil prices have gone down. Stock prices have increased in Europe. Also on Wall Street, we've seen improvement in S&P 500, NASDAQ composite, and the Dow Jones industrial average. NATO begins its meeting today. We'll see what they decide with the 5% or GDP that they are talking about. As for the airlines, it's just simple common sense. Qatar closes airspace. Most of the countries in the Middle East, they are closing their airspace. I always say that in aviation, the biggest thing is safety. And if you see that your passengers are going to be unsafe, the common sense thing will be to say, oh, Air India, Finnair, and all the other, Cathay Pacific, these are some of the, Qatar Airways, these are some of the airlines that have said, no, we're suspending operations for now. But our interest should be global peace, as the Pope has argued for, and as Antonio Guterres has demanded. That, look, the world is better off with diplomacy rather than this missile-driven thrust towards peace. Thank you very much, Rotus.